"Listen to me, Raistlin," Antimodes said, and the boy quieted and held still. He realized that this conversation was not that of an adult talking down to a child. It was one equal speaking to another. "The magic will not solve your problems. It will only add to them. The magic will not make people like you. It will increase their distrust. The magic will not ease your pain. It will twist and burn inside you until sometimes you think that even death would be preferable." Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And welcome to our 600th sub celebration video for Dragonlance.
Woohoo!
This video series contained within the Wayreth playlist, all about Raistlin's relationships with various characters. The heroes of the Lance, we're going to kind of go almost from least close to most close. So naturally it'll end with Caramon and Crysania or something. Or we might just jump ahead at some point because people want a Raistlin and Caramon video once we get 1,000 subs. So we'll have to do that. But we will probably have to do 2-3 videos on that relationship because it's a very, very complex and important one. This relationship is one of the most important. It is the relationship with one of Raistlin's father figures. The first father of sorts to Raistlin was his actual father. The second father figure, I would argue, was Paladin or Fizban. The next two were dark perversions in the form of Feaston Dantalus and Parsalian. They were kind of mentors in a twisted way. Now we're dealing with Antimodes, who started off the most fatherly but became the most twisted kind of relationship in a way. This relationship ended in the emotional abandonment and disownment of Raistlin by Antimodes. Antimodes was a mage. His family were a family of seamstresses and weavers. So he knew his way around Fred and around hard work. He came into Solus with an old style attitude, and he was an old friend, of course, of Otik. But when he arrived in Solus, he was approached by Kitiara, who was keen to find a way to dispense with Raistlin and dump him on someone who would take care of the kid. In some ways, she did good here, in that she knew that Raistlin's father was distant with Raistlin. Rosamund couldn't take care of Raistlin, and all the village boys bullied Raistlin. Now, she also didn't mind the boys bullying him, but sometimes they took it too far. Hence, he needed a protector, a real one. So this was the last act of kindness she ever did Raistlin, finding him a real protector and then just abandoning him and never looking back. We're going to analyze Kitiara's relationship with Raistlin in the next video in this style, I think. It would be fitting. Antimodes, for his part, Antimodes would end up becoming the father figure Raistlin kind of always wanted. He cared for Raistlin. He loved the boy. It's rather like Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin in a way. There's a huge amount of differences. Now, Antimodes was blind to a lot of Raistlin's flaws. This in spite of seeing Raistlin do things like poison a kid in class in order to teach him a lesson to stop bullying him. There was a lot of signs like that. But on the other hand, Antimodes saw how the boys treated Raistlin and naturally felt a little protective of the poor boy. And I say poor boy because, let's face it, a 6-year-old to 10-year-old should not be beaten up in the way Raistlin was. And I know there's a few commenters who are going to go, Raistlin later became a monster. To an extent, but he was always a product of his environment. But he did have a sense of loyalty. The thing with Antimodes is, for years, would pay for Raistlin's schooling. And Raistlin would grow to love Antimodes and admire him, hero worshipping him, and imagining himself becoming like Antimodes one day. In fact, some of Raistlin's attitudes towards women were clearly derived from Antimodes' own views. Some of his outlook on hard work and on travel seem very akin to Antimodes, just in that you can't stay where it's comfy all the time. Otherwise, you won't ever want to leave. Even though danger is coming into your home and you're not safe there anymore, you have to leave to safer pastures or something. You have to go make something of yourself in life. This sort of attitude is one Caramon would struggle with. Although Caramon, to his credit, did live up to it quite well. Raistlin, as a teen, he would come to love Antimodes all the more. And Antimodes would love Raistlin as his own son, doting on him, bragging about him to all the mages, just as Ladonna did for Dalamar the Dark. The difference is Dalamar was never a very brilliant man, and Dalamar had decades on Raistlin. But the difference is Raistlin, ahead of any magical potential, was a genius intellectually and had an eidetic memory. Dalamar doesn't. These key differences would cause Antimodes, I think, to become a bit of a point of irritation for a lot of the Archmages, because they felt him to be a nuisance. because he kept bragging about, oh, well, this one boy I found, he outclasses and outshines your boy or your girl. But when you discover Raistlin Magier, you're entitled to some bragging rights. The trouble is when the test would come up. When the test came, Antimodes would be told about how Raistlin burnt his brother alive. Now, Antimodes had never had much experience with what the Black Robes tend to do in their tests. And so he didn't have a good point of comparison. And we know that other Black Robes did just as wicked stuff in their test, because they don't seem all that disturbed by Raistlin burning his brother alive during the test. Antimodes, this was the relationship that was the worst kind of betrayal, because Antimodes loved Raistlin. Yes, he did need to know that Raistlin was kind of flawed, but I kind of feel like him knowing about what happened maybe shouldn't have happened. Now, the reason was that Persalion did not want Raistlin to become Antimodes' apprentice, because everyone and their mother knows Antimodes would have apprenticed Raistlin and would have taught him. But here's the thing, Raistlin was always more mature and kind when around Antimodes. He was also a lot nicer to Caramon, for example, when Antimodes was around. And this is something Caramon noted. And Caramon wanted Antimodes to travel with them, brothers in arms. The thing is, both brothers liked Antimodes and wanted him around, because Raistlin was better when he was around. He made Raistlin a better person, because he was the best kind of father in some ways. But Persalion sabotaged that, and did manipulate Antimodes and talk him into hating Raistlin to an extent. The fact that Raistlin had burnt Caramon alive horrified Antimodes, who loved his own brothers, though he sometimes was not on speaking terms with them. The thing with Antimodes was he was to regard Raistlin as a monster, and he hated Raistlin, was disgusted by him, and wanted nothing to do with him. The loss of this loving father destroyed Raistlin, because it takes Raistlin about 2 months, I think, to recover emotionally enough to travel. And Raistlin's a guy with an Oedipal complex. His relationship with Crysania is rather akin to his relationship with his mom in a lot of ways. But there's also a hunger for a figure like Antimodes. Antimodes is someone who cannot forgive Raistlin this one sin. Losing one's ultimate father figure will damage someone, especially when that father figure looks at you with disgust and horror and hatred. Raistlin did end up asking him, "Can I be your apprentice, please?" And Antimodes avoids giving him an answer, and Raistlin realizes when Antimodes can't bear to look at him, and even mentions dropping him off in Haven, the most Antimodes does is offer up to write a letter to the Mad Baron and say, okay, I'll give you a letter of recommendation and a reference, but stay away from me. I never want to see you again, essentially. And he never does see Raistlin again, which this abandonment is rather akin to the abandonment Kitiara dealt out to the brothers. And we have to bear in mind, Caramon himself is rather saddened and hurt by this. So it's not just Raistlin that Antimodes is abandoning, it's Caramon. And Antimodes must have been something like an uncle to Caramon. And you gotta bear in mind, Caramon is such a sweet person that he felt joy that Raistlin had a father figure. Now, Guylan is someone whom Caramon had dearly loved. Caramon was a daddy's boy, but he didn't begrudge his brother having a secondary father figure. Rather, he felt, good, my brother has a father figure.
My brother has someone who cares for him.
There is a way to mitigate the darkness within Raistlin. And ironically, the only one who could do it at this stage was Antimodes, but he chose not to. So he bears a part of the blame for Raistlin's fall. And the sad thing is, Antimodes knows that. On the other hand, I get the feeling that because of the way Antimodes came to scorn Raistlin, after Legends, Antimodes is someone who will never forgive Raistlin. He just thinks, no, he wasn't redeemed. He was probably trying to kill Caramon when he was redeemed, which is sad, because the one person who should have believed in Raistlin the most never could again. And I think that's the main tragedy to the Raistlin duology.
Both Antimodes and Raistlin are both victims of this.
Yeah.
Raistlin had the world out to get him from day one.
In a way, it's the prodigal son. That's what Raistlin is archetypally. But the trouble is there's a prodigal father and there a false father, I guess you could say. I wonder if, in some ways, we can compare Antimodes as a father figure to Brooks from Shawshank Redemption. A father who loses his way and never quite finds it again. I think that's archetypally one good point of reference. There's also, arguably, the Emperor from Genji Monogatari, who keeps inflicting inadvertent pains upon his son, and Genji, who keeps inflicting pains upon his father. That's what this relationship reminds me of. Father and son hurting each other when they don't mean to. And as an aside, I'll also end this video with the comment that Guylan sounds like Gillian, so we could joke that there's also a reference to the God of Knowledge with Raistlin and Caramon when it comes to their actual father. The next podcast in this style we'll do is probably going to involve Kitiara. I really want to analyze that relationship. But instead, the next Dragonlance video will be a continuation of the book club podcast, as we do have to touch upon that. And if you enjoyed this video and want to help support us in getting to the next yardstick to measure our channel by, smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Theros smashing a Dragonlance into shape.